less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. My name is Jake Green. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. We have a great interview with a guy named Joe King. We'll get to that here in a second. If you have any questions about the Libertarian Party of Georgia, what we stand for, what we're doing around the state to help spread freedom and liberty, you can go to lpgeorgia.com. We have a whole bunch of resources on there. You can sign up for things like Liberty Watch, which is an email list that basically informs you of all the legislation that could possibly be passing that will affect you within the state of Georgia. You can learn about events that we have, including we have range days with Mr. Edgar Mills down at Osprey Shooting Solutions every now and then, which is a fun one. And we have all sorts of events that occur. Some are virtual, some are in person. So you can go check all that out. You can also figure out exactly where you land on the political spectrum with the world's smallest political quiz. So yeah, head on over to lpgeorgia.com for all of that. You can also follow us on Twitter at lpgeorgia. You can follow our Facebook page, Libertarian Party of Georgia, and you can follow us over on Instagram, Libertarian Party of Georgia. Like I said, tonight we have an interview with a guy named Joe King, who owns a shop called The Shoppe in Fort Oglethorpe, just across this side of the border in Georgia from Tennessee. It's right on the border. So yeah, he's been harassed by the police for the past few years. He is now suing his local sheriff's department. So let's get right into it. All right, Mr. Joe King, welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. How you doing today?
Doing wonderful. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I sure do appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. You're tucked away up in the very north of Georgia. Is that correct?
Yeah, right here in the little town that's hard to pronounce, Fort Oglethorpe. It's right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay. Okay. I've got
tiny little spot.
Nice. Yeah, I've got some buddies who just a friend and his girlfriend who just moved to Chattanooga, and now they're buying a house, I believe, in Fort Oglethorpe. Which is
wow,
kind of crazy.
Yeah, Fort Oglethorpe's it's definitely a little small town. Definitely has a lot of small town stuff that happens. You know, even though it's outside of Chattanooga, which is obviously a bigger Tennessee city, but everything is still a little tucked in the little country back here. So it kind of reminds me of home.
Where's home for you?
Home is Alabama. That's where I was born and raised.
Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama.
Are you a Tide or a Auburn?
I am a Tide.
Bummer.
Yeah. I
mean, great for y'all. Horrible for everybody else.
It was a born and raised kind of thing. My dad kind of ingrained it in me to be an Alabama fan. I didn't really have much of a choice growing up. If I went any other way, he would have beat me senseless. So
that's understandable. I'm an Aggie, born and raised. So,
that's all right.
We've been suffering through 80 years of misery and hell. So barely anything. The only thing good that came to us left us early and failed in the NFL. So
wow, yeah.
So yeah, rough life being a Aggie fan. But I went to SCAD. I went to Savannah down in Savannah and Oglethorpe. I immediately, when I saw Oglethorpe in this name, I was like, is this in Savannah? But no, it's up north.
Yeah, it's definitely. I actually have a lot of people that sales reps when I deal with them. They're like, how do you pronounce that again? Oglethorpe. And I just say Ogle and then Thorpe afterwards.
It doesn't seem like it'd be that hard for people to pronounce.
Said Oglethorpe, Oglethorpe. Just some of the weirdest pronunciations. I'm just like, it's not that hard.
All right, to each their own, I guess.
Right.
All right, Joe. So I've been told, and I've read that
Mhm.
you have had some run-ins with the police recently. Can you tell us about what's been happening with your shop?
So yeah, in 20, I want to say it was, gosh, it seems like everything's jumbling together and moving so fast. 2022, because 23 was kind of like a recovery year. 2022, we had a letter that was delivered to us. It was actually delivered in March, but it was scheduled to be, or it was printed on there February, so we didn't get it like a whole month later. But it basically, and this is, I know you can't read it and it's a lot, but that's the letter, and it basically says, hey, you're selling cannabis and you need to stop or we're going to arrest you and take everything. And that's just like a very shorthand version of it.
Right.
Say, hey, your product that you're selling is illegal, and we tested it and it's illegal, and if you don't stop, you're going to go to jail. And they didn't just send it to me; they sent it to several other smoke shops around here. But I'm not the kind of person that's just going to lay down and take it, So
Darn right.
when I received it, I had questions immediately. So me and my manager at the time, me and her went down to the sheriff's department to get clarification. And one of the officers there was like, yeah, everybody and anybody who sells any of that product should go to jail because that's drugs. And I was just like, okay, so if the federal, all the federal stuff that like the House, the Farm Bill, all that good stuff. So if all my product abides by that, it shouldn't be illegal. And I had paperwork and stuff. They weren't hearing it. They didn't have. I even took the paperwork down there because they wouldn't tell me what it was at the time, like what it was that they had tested.
Of course, I wouldn't.
There's a process that goes through the whole testing, and you have to have so much of the product to test it for it to run back an accurate reading. And not to mention the filled kit that they were using. They weren't even sending it off to like the GBI or anything. They were just using a little filled kit. I can actually tell you what it was called if I could find it right here in this paper.
Nice.
It was.
Yeah, because I imagine you got to send these, like anything testing. You small samples aren't going to work because there's going to be variation in everything.
Yeah. So anytime you send off a product, and there's several DEA certified labs, and there's actually one here in Chattanooga, but where ours came from, which this is our lab, which obviously is kind of a lot to see, but that was the labs for the product that ended up being in question, which was an edible. It was a Nerd Nugget gummy. I was looking for that, and that was just one of the files. That was one of the pieces that were on top.
Yeah.
There's so many pieces, so many just pieces to this, but they were using a like a field testing kit. It was orange. I don't remember exactly the name of it. It's somewhere in this book, but it has modules that goes with it, and those modules, you have to have specific ones to test, say a concentrate, flour, anything of that nature. Well, they had got an edible, and they didn't use the proper module for that, for the edibles that they had got. They said which obviously it was the product. They had the product that they bought from my store. They'd sent in undercover, and they said they tested it and it tested hot. But I had the batch where that was sent off to a DEA lab, and I had all the paperwork, and they just were just like, no, that's not good enough. It's still drugs, and our stuff says it's illegal, therefore it is illegal.
Because they're infallible.
Exactly. So after that, we left the sheriff's department, and I was just like, well, I don't want anything to cause me to get arrested, because I'm not a person that I don't think I could handle jail myself, honestly. But I mean, who can really? I mean, it's always portrayed in movies and TV shows as the worst place ever. So, I mean, why would anybody want to be there? So I came back to the shop that day, took all my stuff off the shelf. I said, I'm not selling any cannabis from here on out, because I don't want me or my employees to get in trouble.
Right.
So I dealt with that for a little bit and took it off, and I kind of just let it go. And then I was tired of it after that. I was just like, I can't just sit down. And this is what I was building my business on is hemp and cannabis. I took 6 months of cannabis college just to understand business and cannabis, how it works, the all the derivatives of it, every little aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so at that time I was just like, well, this money spent on school is kind of going to go to waste if I don't, do something. So that was when we decided, hey, we're just going to fight back. We're going to push back and go after them, because this is unlawful. It's not right to be charging, to be going against us. So we went from store to store to all the stores who may or may not have received a letter. There were some who had, some who hadn't. And we went back and forth with these stores until finally we settled on finding a lawyer. And we got one of the best lawyers in Atlanta. He's stand-up dude, and he took our case and built it, and he did phenomenal. Really, really, really knocked it out of the park. We spent a few months. I think that went on. We got the letter in March, and we were, I think by September, October, we were able to put some product back on the shelf. So just to give you a rough estimate about how long we had the product just off the shelves. And believe it or not, you wouldn't think about it, but that really hurt the business big time, especially, post-COVID, already dealing with that, trying to build back from COVID.
Trying to build back better.
Yeah, trying to build back better. Because we stayed strong. We stayed strong. We counted ourselves as essential, and we were able to,
there we go,
the stuff that they needed in the time. So
heck yeah.
But we stood through that, and then we did the whole court battle. There's several times we'd go to court and have to sit there, and it was nerve-wracking. It was definitely nerve-wracking. There's several times in that instance where, like, I'd be driving down the road and I'd see a sheriff, like a sheriff's deputy, and they you just always have that fear that they'd come behind me and pull me over. I actually had a few instances like that. There was one time I went to eat, and I was heading home. I live in Tennessee, but my business is in Georgia. So I just live right, 5 minutes over the line.
Yeah.
So I was in Georgia eating, and I was leaving and going home and heading down the road. It was right along the state line, and a sheriff's deputy, one of the Catoosa County sheriff's deputies, flicked on his blue lights. I was doing the speed limit. I was doing all the proper things. And I was just like, oh, well, I'm going to pull over into this gas station, and he can, pull up behind me. And I pulled it to the gas station. He pulled behind me. I honestly thought he was going to go around me. He sat behind me for a minute and then whipped around and faced me. And I was just like, is this like one of those running me out of town gestures? Kind of what it felt like, because I actually had a passenger in the car, and he was just like, we were just looking at each other like, this is new. I've been pulled over, and not once have I been blue lighted, and then the officer pulls up in front of me and just faces me. Doesn't do anything, doesn't say anything, didn't pull me over. Then he just like turns off his blue lights, sits there for another few seconds, and then pulls over in between the gas pumps and sits there until I drive off. And then he pulls out behind me until I got to the state line, and we parted ways. I was just like, that's the weirdest instance ever when it came down to a law enforcement officer. I've never had that. I've never done anything to, other than, I got the occasional speeding ticket, but
Right. That's wild, man. I
Yeah.
mean, how could you not be suspicious of that? That seems like harassment from a police officer for no good reason. You're just driving home from work. Like, that's wild. I want to go back to the gummy though. What what was it about it that made it illegal? Was it had too much THC? What was it?
Yes, they were saying that it had over the legal limit of the Delta Delta 9
or something like that?
which it's 0.3%.
Yeah.
So and what this like in the looking at the labs for it, it was reading that it was less than 0.001% Delta 9. And there was actually several less than quality point. Okay, so it was 0.1. I was reading that wrong. So it was 0.1 Delta 9 THC, and the limit is obviously 0.3. And it was a whole thing, man. I was just like, but I have it right here, and they're like, but ours says.
What did theirs say?
Theirs was saying that which of course, obviously, when you're testing it without the right module, and this ended up how our case kind of got a little, because we actually had two experts, the creator of the module or the unit that during our trial they testified, and they were like, yeah, well, you have to have this module to do it, and according to y'all didn't have it, and you have to. So
you think just based on that alone it'd be threat?
Right. You think it would, but they ended up that not being the case. You know, that their machine or their equipment was null and void.
Mm-hmm.
Now, according to what my lawyer was telling me the other day, they're using another machine that tests, and it's actually happening close to Atlanta-ish area.
Okay.
And down in those more mid to southern Georgia, where they're using another unit, and they're going into other shops and raiding them. And our lawyer was talking about, how we needed to kind of buckle down and say, hey, because, it could possibly, they try to start harassing us again, just because it's an election year, to my understanding. Mm-hmm. So, which other than the presidential, you have, I guess, local elections in this area. And I kind of have a little bit of nervousness every day when I come to work, but at the same time, I'm just like, yeah, if something happens, I get bailed out. I know I will, but I still don't want to deal with that.
Right. Man. So I've been interviewing a lot of folks who have been wrongfully accused of things recently. Yeah. And the mere fact that during the court case, evidence is presented that 100% gets the citizen off the hook, and it is not incriminating, and it proves that they're innocent, and the government just doubling down and continuing to push forward. It's mind-blowing to me, the hubris and the just the authoritarian nature of some of these departments.
Ridiculous. It is ridiculous to what they have too much power, and there's something honestly needs to be done about that.
I mean, God forbid someone come in and try to get a gummy that has less than 0.3%.
Right.
God forbid somebody come in and try to get a gummy that does have 10 milligrams of THC. How is that going to affect the rest? Like anybody else around you? Like, oh man, it drives me nuts.
I would honestly, I get in conversations a lot until we talk about cannabis, we talk about alcohol, and one of the things that comes up a lot is like, well, how would you compare somebody on cannabis to somebody on drunk or on alcohol who's drunk?
Yeah.
And that's a very easy. I would rather honestly deal with someone who is smoking than deal with someone who is drinking, because most people who are smoking are kind of just laid back, chill, kind of very quiet. They want quiet. They just want to be quiet.
Yeah.
People who are drinking, they want to be loud, obnoxious, noisy, destructive. Everything in between, you're just like, eh. So most times that's one of those, it's you figure something like that would be legal over something that's more destructive like alcohol.
Yeah.
Common sense. I'd rather my child get a hold of a gummy, and I'm not saying that like, hey, take these gummies. Like
Right.
I would rather them get a hold of my gummies than a bottle of vodka or a bottle of,
100%.
yeah, like then something. Because I mean, honestly, the smell of cannabis is going to deter 90% of people. You could get the fruitiest alcoholic beverage you could find, like a pina colada or something, and the kid's going to see that and be like, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's just wild that it goes all the way back to like the 1910s, 1920s with like William Randolph Hearst and all those twats back in the day trying to demonize cannabis. They got prohibition enacted, like all these people trying to get control of people and not allow citizens to do what they please, even though they're not hurting anybody. It's just wild how almost 100 years later we're still dealing with that crap.
It seems like it's about time that it needs to come to a screeching halt that we deal with it, to be honest. And I've been talking to a bunch of people through different advocacy groups in Georgia. Peachtree Normal, they're one of the bigger cannabis advocacy groups. In Normal in general is one of the biggest cannabis advocacy groups in the U.S. But Peachtree, they do a lot of work for the local cannabis community and trying to, help with fighting legislation and changing laws and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of ever since last year or the year before last dealing with all that, I've just kind of laid low. I've kept an eye and make sure what I'm doing is okay. But as far as I've just kind of wanted to ride under the radar, not knock anybody's ruffle any feathers. But at the same time, I want to, just for the simple fact that there are still people sitting in jail that are wrongfully convicted of just having cannabis on them.
Yep.
And they're still dealing with it to this day. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I still continue to even talk about it, because it's, I could be that person that was wrongfully arrested and wrongfully accused and didn't have the ability or able to get out,
Absolutely. It's important for people to speak out when their government is abusive in any way, because allowing the government to run ripshod all over anybody only gives them more boldness to do it again in the future, and only sets precedent to continue to do it. So the more people who stand up for things like this that are absolutely ridiculous and just face value make no sense, the better it will be for your community, your town, your state.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So what's going on with the case now? Are there any updates? Like how are we doing as far as fighting the government?
So as of right now, we're actively seeking funds so our lawyer can continue.
Okay.
We were talking the other day, and I can actually I don't know how much I can actually bring out about it, but we were talking the other day about having to push forward with our, where's it at? I'm trying to get it pulled up real quick. Whether we need to get a final hearing date and file a summary for judgment discussing, we were talking about discussing obviously needing additional fees. So we're working with a few other companies to get that pushed forward. The judge, he's afraid that the judge is going to force our hand and go back on our, because we ended up winning our suit and we got an injunction. We were able to keep them at bay for a little while. But at this point in time, with it being as long as it has, if we don't push forward with it and go, we were basically just trying to figure out how to go from there. And he says he's got a solid play against them. I don't know exactly what it is. Just for a simple fact that I don't know what I can and cannot share.
Right. It's a court. It's illegal.
Yeah, court. one of those court things. But he said he's got a good play on it, and all we got to do is just get the funds and go from there. But hopefully, if we do get everything raised, we'll be able to get this knocked out. And hope we're actually looking at this being a step forward in the full legalization in the state of Georgia at some point in time, whether it be for a medical cannabis or adult use cannabis. We're looking for it to be a big play forward in the court system to get it to where, because I mean, it's senseless. It's something that is going to draw revenue. It's something that's going to bring in funds to the state of Georgia. So why not? You know, you can go to Atlanta and a cop catches you smoking a joint down there. The worst they're going to do most of the times, they're going to make you throw it on the ground, and squish it out. But I mean, I don't even think they do that there.
I don't think so. I see people smoking weed all the time.
right. So I mean, last time I was there, it was I was walking down, I was going to the Burger Shack, and or Shake Shack, and somebody was smoking right there, and I was just like, hey, yeah, that smells good.
So you said you're trying to get funds for this. Is there a way people can help? Is there like a donation page, or are you just gathering it yourself?
Well, I've been we're just kind of gathering it ourselves. We've had a little jar here. We've been taking up any form of donations. We had a GoFundMe for the longest time, but it went for a while. We shared it, and then people stopped giving. I think I was considering doing it again.
Yeah,
but
people have short attention spans.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, holding on.
When they share it once, that's it. Yeah. They don't want to share it again.
Darn right. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Everybody's just bombarded with so much information.
Yeah,
there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. But anytime anybody comes in here, we're just like, hey, you know, if you feel like donating to it, this is our cause.
Nice.
So anytime.
Are there links? Are there sites? Are there do y'all have Twitter handles, anything like that people can shout y'all out or promote?
Yeah. So basically all of our stuff is at the Shoppe LLC.
Okay.
I would say
E, by the way.
Yeah, SHOPPE LLC. That is, you know, we have a Facebook, we have an Instagram. We keep up with both of those frequently. I have access to those. We also have a website. Anybody can go on there and look. It's thekingshop.com. We sell a little bit of everything that we don't sell in store. So everything we sell online is drop shipped. So it's just like a little tiny website. Yeah, that's it. That's it right there.
There we go. Love the colors.
Thanks.
Love that.
Yeah,
oh, nice. Yeah, I got merch and everything. Cool.
Yeah, a little bit of custom merch that we do. So,
heck yeah. Well, cool, man. Yeah, we're gonna blast this out. I'm gonna put out some clips over the coming weeks. We're Libertarian Party. We're all about removing legislation.
Right.
Legalizing marijuana along with every single other drug that there is.
Exactly.
But especially marijuana. It's crazy that marijuana was ever on this schedule.
It needs to be taken off.
100%.
Do something about it.
100%. Yeah. So real quick before we go, like outside of the shop, what do you do?
I am a assistant pastor. I'm actually the assistant pastor for our church. It's right next to the shop. We're attached, literally the same building. I'm a drummer. I take piano lessons, so I'm obviously a form of a musician, and I'm a writer too. So,
all right.
And I dabble in graphic designs. But as I was telling you, the guy that we were doing the live feed, I've been doing our church live feed before I was the assistant pastor, and we did that for a while. And I actually got a guy that works for the news station up here in Chattanooga. He's one of my close friends, and he does our graphics now, and he does the graphics for the news station and does the graphics for us.
Sweet.
He teaches me things on Photoshop, and we bat back and forth ideas. So I like to basically work on computers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be around electronics and go on the boat. So that's fun.
Go on the freaking boat, man. That sounds great. Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. Whenever there is an update, if this gets happily resolved or sadly resolved, I would still like to have you back to talk about it again.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I'd love to have, it would just be insanity if it went the other direction. But if it did, sad cases tend to get more eyes than happy cases. So
exactly. Well, let's hope I don't end up in jail. So if I do, you'll be the first to know, I'm sure.
I wonder if they let you do a podcast from prison.
Right? If they'll let me do some screen time.
There we go. Well, Joe, we're gonna try to get some more eyeballs on this and try to put a little pressure on folks. Is there any, like, for some of the things I've been doing recently, people can call in to certain departments, certain like representatives. Are there is there anything like that people can do at the moment, or is that not really in this game plan?
There are. I can email you a list of names. I'll get it together. Give me a couple of days and see who I can work with. But I will say anybody obviously who's libertarian that you can vote for. Throw their name out there. that's always got. They've always got my vote. I've dealt with during all of that, I dealt in a lot of politics, and libertarians were my go-to. They were the ones, if I needed stuff done, they were the ones I went to. So I'm a full supporter, and I stand behind the party too. So
awesome. Well, Joe, thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you too, Jake. You need anything in the meantime, holler at us, bud.
Will do. So there you go. That was my interview with Joe King. If you would like to support him and you live near the Fort Oglethorpe area, I would highly recommend going to his shop and picking up some of his products, especially if you already use those kinds of things. That seems like the best possible way to help him out right now, since they're funding the whole court case themselves. So that'll do it for this episode, y'all. Don't forget to check out lpgeorgia.com for all of our upcoming events, and go follow us over on Twitter at LPGeorgia.